Welcome to this lesson on Triage, a strategy to improve your test-taking skills. Let's get started. To begin, try this quiz. You have 30 seconds to complete it. Go. How did you do? Now look closely. Do you see how some problems are easier than others? This is actually true of every test. There will always be some easy problems and some hard problems. Have you ever run out of time on a test? What happens if you miss all the easy problems? In other words, what if these were the only problems you had a chance to solve? And then you ran out of time before you got to these problems. In other words, what if all the problems at the end of the test are the easiest ones and you run out of time before you get to them? So let's talk a little bit about tests. First, remember that on most tests, the questions are not in order of difficulty. The first question you see might be really hard, and you could spend a few minutes on it. And the second question might be really easy. Wouldn't it make more sense to solve all the easy problems first? That way, you'll save time and earn more points. But remember, the questions are not in order of difficulty. So, how do we find the easiest problems and solve those ones first? And that's where triage comes in. Triage is the process of finding the easiest problems and solving them first. Let's look at a few examples. This is what a test would actually look like. Imagine you open your booklet and this is the first problem you see. How would you know if it's an easy problem or a hard problem? Should you solve it right away? Most students do exactly that. In other words, most students solve the first problem, then the second, then the third, and so on. And then you turn the page and this is the second problem. Wouldn't it have been better to skip the first problem to save time for the easier problems like this? Then you turn the page again and see this problem. It looks long and stressful, but how do you know if the next problem will be easier or harder? So, let's figure out how to find the easiest problems and solve them first. To get started, here's a bit of history. Triage was originally used during wartime by doctors to figure out which patients to treat first. For example, if a hospital receives a gunshot victim and a patient with a broken arm, who's going to get treated first? In test taking, we will use the same term, triage, but instead we will ask which problem should be solved first. And remember, most students solve the problems in order, meaning the first, then the second, then the third. But this is not the best way to take a test. Instead of solving the problems in order, try this strategy. Read every question once. If you read it and know how to do it, then solve it now. Take the time necessary to set up and solve the problem successfully. Since you know how to do it, we can assume it's an easier problem for you. But if you read it and get confused, you aren't sure what to do, or you feel like you need to reread it, just skip it. You can mark your test booklet as a reminder to come back to this harder problem later. Remember, figuring out how hard a problem is takes time. So to save time for all the easy problems, spend only 10 seconds on each question. After 10 seconds, make your decision. If you know how to solve it, do it now. If you don't know how to do it, mark it and come back later. Or simply put, with every question, ask yourself, will I solve it now or will I solve it later? And be sure to spend only 10 seconds making this decision. Now, skipping problems will feel weird at first because we've been taught to solve it in order. But remember that this strategy will help you save time and do better on the test by solving the easiest problems first. And also remember that it's okay to skip problems and get some wrong. You don't need 100% on the test to pass, and you will still get a chance to solve the harder problems later. So, let's practice this strategy now. Remember, with each question, ask yourself, will you solve it now or will you solve it later? Here we go. Read the question once and ask yourself, will you solve it or skip it? Remember, 10 seconds, solve it now or later. What did you decide? Moving on, once again, now or later. What'd you decide? And remember to keep forcing yourself to do that with each problem you look at. Spend only 10 seconds making your decision. Will you solve it now or will you solve it later? If it looks like you know how to do it, spend some time on it and solve it. If you're not sure about it, just force yourself to mark it, skip it, and you'll come back to it later. Solve now or later. Now, it might feel weird skipping problems at first, but you will get comfortable and confident with triage as you practice with the strategy. Now, what about the problems that you skip? Well, after you finish all the easier problems, go back and try those problems again. You might find that you learned something while testing that helps you solve the harder problems. And if you still aren't sure, just guess. You might guess the correct answer, so be sure not to leave any problems blank. And it's usually best to guess all the same letter, like all A's, all B's, or all C's. That way, you have a higher chance of guessing the right answer. And in the end, that would look like this. And that's triage. So as a review, with every question, ask yourself, will I solve it now or solve it later? Remember to use only 10 seconds per question to make this decision, and really force yourself to skip the question if you aren't sure. In other words, you gotta fight the urge to solve the problems in order. You will quickly find that this strategy will almost immediately improve your scores and help you get better at taking tests. Good luck! Later. So this is the process of triage. It's going to take some time to practice, so next time you take a test, give it a shot. And each time you go test, you'll get more and more comfortable with the process of skipping problems and solving them in order from easiest to hardest. Good luck!